All right. Here we go.
All right.
First try.
Are we recording?
Yeah.
What do you want to start with?
What's your name?
My name is Bill McMillan, and I'm an alcoholic.
Where do you live?
I am currently living down in Inglewood, Colorado, off of South Broadway in Bellevue.
Where are you from?
I was originally born at Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, Texas.
What's your life look like after that?
Born to a military dad. Both my folks are from the Texas area, Fort Worth, Dallas area. I was the youngest of two, got an older sister. She was born in West Texas during my dad's flight training in Lubbock. And I believe first assignment once he came through flight training, and I'm not exactly sure. I think we moved around on the states a little bit, but first assignment that I believe that he was a squadron commander down in Colombia when I was a baby. We came back to the States a little bit here and there, mainly to Pensacola area. There was a couple of big Air Force bases that he was doing some training, and we lived there for a little while. But then we went back down to Colombia for several years. I think we came back to the States, and then his final assignment, he was the liaison between the American and Nicaraguan Air Forces. Retired in the mid to late 70s, I guess, and then we came back to the States. We're in Texas for a couple years, and then he got a job with Rocky Mountain Helicopters. I don't know exactly what he was doing, but we moved to Evergreen in between like my 8th and 9th grade year, so that's how we ended up here.
What's your mom's name again?
Eddie Lou, EddydyeLou, Eddie Lou Burt. She was a very southern lady. Grew up within a couple of blocks of Colonial Country Club, but my grandfather, her dad was like a civil engineer for the city, and they didn't make very much money, but my grandmother, her mother, was very socially minded, so they needed to make sure to live in the right area, which is kind of funny to me because when you get to their block, like you've got 2 blocks to the Colonial Country Club, and when you hit their block, all the houses went from being these big mansions down to the little bitty houses, but they were in the right area,
Yeah.
So it was all about living in the right area and, perceptions and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's where she got her training.
Do you think that affected you much?
Perceptions in the military? Are you kidding me? Yeah, people pleasing and worrying about what everybody thought, and as you've heard me say many times, it didn't matter what was going on in the house. It was about making sure that your makeup was perfect and the Cadillac was shiny when you left the house, because other than that, it didn't matter. They were wonderful people and, loving, caring, super, great senses of humor, but they definitely had some issues that they dealt with in their lives.
What's that look like now? What's your family like today?
Mom died of cancer in '89, and my dad died of alcohol in 2010. So they are gone now. I have a older sister and my brother-in-law, and my 2 nieces that are up in North Denver. It's taken some time. I mean, there was definitely some separation from my sister during all the change and my drinking and my alcoholism and all that kind of stuff. But I have a very good relationship with her today. I stop and see them and talk to them all the time now. So good relationship there.
How about Max?
My son is wonderful. He is 18 now and lives with me full time, and gone to work for Encore Electric and getting ready to start his apprenticeship, and he's really dealt with a lot of issues in his life, but he's a fantastic kid that we've got a great relationship with.
If you had 3 words, how would you define yourself?
3 words that define myself, huh? Wow. I persevere. I'm willing to take direction. But I can also be, really good on the leadership aspects of things too. But I'm always open to be taught and, change and, I think that's a lot of the driving force behind me, for me personally, spiritually, at work, those kinds of things, that I can assume those roles and be open-minded to any of it. I don't know if that's 3 words or not.
No, I guess I would wrap one of those up into humility. Seems to be real for you, and I mean, just my own perception of what our friendship's been like.
Right.
Like that humility has empowered your leadership skills. Like you've inspired and helped me a lot in that. So I would say humility is one of your defining traits from the outside looking in. At
Oh,
least.
thank you.
3 more. What do you think others think of you?
I guess I'd break it down into what you're talking about, personal friends or business or whatever, but I think that they would probably relate to you, I guess, anyways, at this point for me. They would probably tell you some of the same things,
Yeah.
I mean, as far as being able to persevere and being convicted about where I am today and, the change that I've been through. But I think that they would probably say some of the same things as far as being able to persevere and be willing and be taught.
So over the last 20 years, what does that change look like? How do you feel like you've changed in 20 years?
I don't think you have that kind of time. But we've talked a lot about this, and just sitting here in this interview, so maybe it's a little bit different, or, trying to recapture some of the things that we've already talked about. But, I think just a lot of what I've learned, it's just a constant evolution, exactly what we were just talking about before this video started, that there's just that societal impact of who we're supposed to be and chasing the money or the relationship and trying to make things look the way that we think that they're supposed to look like. And it's just a false reality at times, because, if I'm going to tie who I am to the things that are going on in my life, I'm in a bad position, and I just put it in the context of, if there's money in the account, I'm okay. And if there's not, then I'm not okay. And it's just not okay to continue to function that way, because, there's just too many things out there that we've just lost ourselves in, and it doesn't matter if you look at the millennial revolution, and who am I to say these things? It's just my perspective about, those kinds of things that we're being impacted by, and people are losing themselves, and addiction and pills and lack of spirituality. And you can find it on the internet, and you can find that message everywhere. But the reality is what am I going to do about it? And what am I going to do to change those things? And it's incredibly difficult. I mean, there's too many psychologists and too many meds and too many quick fixes and too many things that are out there like that people are trying to seek out, because it's a hard transition. I have to work at it every day, and it doesn't matter if it's at the gym or at the church or at AA or whatever the thing is. I just have to continue to get up and know I have to continue to work at it. And I don't like that message. I want to think that I've got it figured out and got things handled, and I am that guy that's portrayed on the the infomercial that has taken the right pill, or found the right spray can of spray paint for my bald head to influence what you think about me. But it's just a lot of false reality, and it's very convincing, especially these days, because I mean, there's not anything that's happening in the world that isn't hitting our phones right away, or if you are interested in losing weight or finding the right pill, it's all over there, too. But I don't know.
Are you mad at or thankful for your addiction?
Those are probably kind of, I've heard too many people say, I'm so glad I'm an alcoholic, but the reality of it is that, there's a lot of times that I appreciate it, and a lot of times that that I don't necessarily appreciate it. But the more that I stick with it, and the more that I help, and the more that I stay out of those kinds of thoughts, the more that I believe that it's just not something that I even need to concern myself with anymore.
Yeah.
It's like just that diversion of mind, or diversion of thought, away from those kinds of things. It's just, there's so many times where I'm reaching out to new guys that are new to AA, and they've dissected themselves, and they're the youngest brother, and they've got psychologists and meds, and I'm not saying anything about those things, but the easiest answer that I know to fall back onto, instead of trying to figure out all those things, is that I'm an alcoholic, and let's figure out what I need to do to move forward, instead of dissecting everything that's gone on in the past.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
What did I used to want to be?
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to be a pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to follow the old man's footsteps, but yeah, I don't know.
And you did it for a while. That you were taking classes and
I've
right?
done, I could probably get a private pilot's license pretty quickly, but there's just a lot of cost and that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty sure it's not part of Encore University, but I've been waiting. I was going to put a request in to see if they would train me to fly a plane, but I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon.
We'll see what we can do.
That's right. I appreciate it.
So today, what do you want to be?
I don't know.
Or what's your passion?
In the grand scheme of things, when I like to daydream, it's like, I don't know. I mean, if I could step out and do something, I think I would, if I could do anything, I would have a big pile of money and I would dedicate a lot of time to kids. Obviously the addiction and recovery for me would be cool, but the kids are the ones, when I think about the things that really gets me, that I struggle with, it's the kids. I would love to be able to put something together there's an organization called CASA that I've told you about, court-appointed special advocate for kids and, that kind of thing. But if I could really do anything, I would just come up with, a way to be able to drive a lot of nonprofit funds or help the kids. I mean, that would be a daydream of mine.
Mentorship programs of some sort, just giving them a path and opportunity that they might not otherwise have.
I think the critical point is where I see, the critical point is when those kids are coming into that, that transition point, and that's where CASA is. Mm-hmm. They've been taken from the family, they're in scary places, sometimes their siblings and that kind of stuff, but that's where CASA, something like that, in that transition point, there's a lot of support facilities after the fact for the kids, but it's that transition point. The ad litems, the attorneys and the social workers are being handed cases of 40, 50 kids, and their ability to actually focus in and give the help that is needed, is just, that's the point. Like I said, sometimes I can look at an adult and say, he's an alcoholic and he's an adult and he's made his own choices, but sometimes I don't necessarily have the ability to do that with the kids, and I don't work with them that much, but I'd love to be able to.
What's your biggest fear?
My biggest fear? Wow. I don't know, I could probably put it on some kind of spiritual context, but I don't know that is even a fear anymore, I mean, I have such a strong belief system in that side of it, My biggest fear is that I'm going to end up not necessarily back where I was from an addiction standpoint, but that I would end up back, isolated again, away from my fellowship and my men and the service aspect. But there's very little fear around that. It's always available to me.
Yeah.
I guess probably some of my biggest fears revolve around my son. Addiction has been such a big part of my family that that he would somehow slip into that, but I've gained a lot of trust around those kinds of things too.
Is fear a positive thing? Does it motivate you in ways?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like it exposes weakness, and if it's not that I'm out trying to be a martyr about anything, but if I continue to, put my mind in the right place, those things get exposed and I continue to change. Without those kinds of things coming up in my life, I wouldn't change.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've overcome that?
I don't know that I've overcome it, but I've definitely put a process into place to deal with it. It never stops. It's like the old adage of, how can I have one day where everything's perfectly fine and then the next day I've got the same exact set of circumstances, but I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
I've got to continue to realize that it's coming back to me. It's my perceptions, it's my own, self-care. It's my own confidence levels. And, as funny as it is to think about like the old Stuart Smiley or whatever his name was from Saturday Night Live that can look in a mirror and say, people love you and, that kind of stuff. That is true, but the reality is that what I have to do to get there is that it's not something that I just go out, I figure out, and I achieve. It's always going to be a work in progress, and that's probably a message that a lot of people don't want to hear either, myself included,
The work.
That's right. I want to get there, achieve it, be the king, be the hero, and, move on.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's not the case.
What are the methods that you've put in play that work the best for you?
I am a regular attendee of AA. I have, immersed myself in it over the years, and it's taken me some time, to realize that that is the cornerstone of everything that's good that comes from my life, is by going to the meetings, by having a strong sponsor, by reaching out to them. And I don't ever think about drinking. It's about keeping a cool, calm head. It's about, being able to deal with life on life's terms, and a lot of those kind of quirky little sayings that come about, from places like AA and 12-step programs. But and I think more than anything for me, it's been the evolution of my belief system in God and, my spiritual aspects. But there's a lot of days where that's not there for me. No matter how much I pray, or no matter how much I meditate, or how much I talk to myself, the magic is when I hit those points that I'm willing to make a call to the guys that know me and care about me and are willing to listen, because it changes everything when I'm willing to do that. As simple and as stupid as it may sound, it just kind of, it's the key to the whole thing is the fellowship. Who do I reach out to? Who do I talk to? Because if I'm in a stressful situation and I have to get to the point where I'm worried about making that call and the person doesn't necessarily know me and that kind of stuff, it makes it more of a difficult call, because I spend time explaining myself and explaining my story instead of just getting to the heart of the issue, that it's come back to me, I'm freaking the fuck out, or stressing out, or whatever the case happens to be, and just kind of getting me back, talking me down off the ledge so I can get back to life.
What do you do for, what's your day look like, as far as what are some other methods that might not revolve around that but put you in a positive place?
My connection to God has been overwhelming. It is something that I spend a majority of my free time with,
Yeah.
I don't care if you believe me or if you don't believe me, is the place that I'm coming from. It's important, I think, that I tell people that, but I'm also coming from a place of pretty good neutrality because there is so many perceptions of judgment and belief systems and that kind of stuff. And I think if people heard me say that they would probably, the second that they heard those words, that they would tune out or check out, and that's okay with me today too, because I used to spend a lot of time worrying about what you thought about me and that kind of stuff. I'm not running around beating on the Bible, but I definitely, that's a lot of where I spend my time with my mind.
Yeah.
It's changed over time. It feels like something is there with me. It's very comforting to me.
How do you do that? Is that in prayer? Do you reading the Bible or a journal, or what's that connection?
Yes,
for you?
Yes, and yes.
All of those things.
Yeah. It's very natural to me. It's,
Yeah.
I think just like the repetition of doing certain things, waking up and going right into, my little morning 10 or 15 minute routine and, those kinds of things. But, I read a really powerful meditation book a long time ago when I first started getting into it. And it's just little things like that I've picked up along the way, that the tone of my day is set in the morning, and I've never forgotten that. Why is it that I'm going to remember something like that from, everything that I read out of the book, that's going to mean something to me? Well, to me, that's the way that I learn, and that's God speaking to me.
So you set an intention every morning, and that sets your foundation.
And then that continues to evolve. And when shitty things happen during the day, I have the opportunity to kind of step out, kind of reset myself, make a couple of phone calls. And it's just it's just like the practice of, even when you talk to people that are stressed out and you tell them, get up out of the office and go walk around for 15 minutes, things like that, it's a much deeper thing to me, I guess, because God's involved. But it's just over the course of time, it has gotten more and more so, where it's just a majority of the time.
Tell me a little bit about isolation versus connection.
It's huge. It's here again, like the old adage, I can be in a room full of people and be the loneliest person there. It's just, it's where we go. We have become so self-reliant. And there's a lot of messages out there for men and for women, and how that evolves and how that manifests is very different, but the results are typically the same and the solutions are typically the same, and that's just really hard because we become so self-consumed. I think that either addiction or just society is the most massive disease of self. We spend an inordinate amount of time in plastic surgery and, thinking about ourselves and what's being sold and how
Self-help.
It's sold, and exactly that, it's just completely contradicts, everything that we're taught.
Yeah. Who inspires you?
New people in AA that stick around. It's taken me, that's like one of the kind of the false realities of what my belief system has been, is that the people of the Bible were just elevated and they didn't experience problems, but there's a lot of stories over the course of time that I've listened to and that I've read about. You start to realize that these were just regular men. I mean, the stories of the different people and what they went through, and the imperfection of the human being, when you hear things. And I don't know that much about the Bible, but just certain stories of certain individuals and the lives that they led, and the lives that they led up until the point where they made changes and started writing or taking direction or that kind of stuff. That's just a lot of inspirational stories and people.
Yeah. Who has been your biggest supporter?
Oh, wow. I don't know. There's been so many people. I don't know that I could specifically name anybody. There's probably, I could sit here and name off a lot of people that have been instrumental in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, in business, or, you. There's just a whole list of people that have been influential to me. I don't know that there's any one particular person.
Do you ask for help easily?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's taken me a long time. Just through my own addiction, just the realization that, when I do need to ask for help and when I don't.
Yeah.
It's just it's a constantly evolving type of situation, and that's the growth.
Circumstantial,
where I can
somewhat.
Find the direction and peace within myself with my connection to God. And on the days that are difficult and I can't do that, I've got this incredible fellowship that gets me back there.
Yeah. Do you love yourself?
Usually.
Did you used to?
Did I used to?
I guess where I'm going with that is like, what has that evolution been like, right? I think that's a big part of the addiction thing, is like being able to learn to love yourself.
Yeah.
What was that like?
I can sit here and answer that question and probably sound kind of profound about it, but the reality is that those are great questions and things that that people talk about. But what I really believe is that when you're really engaged in fellowship and recovery and the 12-step program, and you're really open to that kind of stuff, there's a lot of wonderful extra benefits that come through that. And here again, some of the very strong belief systems that I have is that there are a lot of things that are wrong with me that I don't know about that still need to change.
Yeah.
And how's that going to happen?
Yeah.
Right? It's by going to meetings, having a sponsor,
Yeah.
And helping people, because when I stop thinking about myself, that's when the powerful change happens. When I'm reaching out to people, because there again, I really believe that God wants me to be happy, joyous, and free, and He wants me to help people. And when I put that into place again and again and again, this incredible change happens. Things that I don't know that need to change.
Yeah.
There's more peace, there's more self-confidence, there's just so many wonderful benefits that come, through that process.
So those are all those byproducts of things
going
into, from a fear sense and a self-loathing sense, and that addiction cycle that you walk into, that you don't know on the back end are going to be these gifts that just show up, and the power of that. But the messaging behind that, I guess, for me is like knowing that on the other end of that journey, there's these other intangibles that you can't quantify and you can't really put down on a list. But
you don't know where you're going.
That fortitude in going through the process and learning has all of these magical traits.
Byproducts, I think, is a great way to say it.
Byproducts,
yeah. The things that I used to blindly operate around, and if it was booze or food or, the thoughts of gambling or sex or, all these other kinds of things that we can lose our minds in. And I'm not saying lose our minds in the sense that we're going crazy with it, but that is the distraction that I turn to when I'm uncomfortable, and when I've turned to it time and time again, especially when you talk about things like alcohol and drugs, at some point they meet, it's like it actually used to work.
Yeah.
Until it became a problem. I'm not saying it worked in a good way, but it worked in the sense of like how to shut that stuff off, how to make me the hero again and shut my mind down to the problems and that kind of thing. But, there again, the issue is it's a short-term fix.
Yeah.
And it eventually becomes a big problem for most people.
Death meditation. So if you're on your deathbed, looking back, what do you want to have? What kind of an impact do you want to, and legacy do you want to leave behind?
Huh?
What kind of mark do you hope that you've left on the world?
Am I getting fired? Geez, I don't know. I watched my dad, go through his evolution and, eventually die of his drinking in 2010. And despite that, he spent the last, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 years of his life doing an unbelievable amount of charity work. He never dealt with what got him to the point that drove him to drink to the point where he died from it. But, I think about a lot of the people that he impacted, and it wasn't necessarily, some of the things that I know that he did in his military career, which, were pretty impressive, and some of the people that he was, involved with and saved in some of those stories. But, I think about that impact that he had on Casa Guatemala, is one of the big ones that he did. There was a lot of charity work that he did in the mountains of Mexico and translating for doctors and some other things that he did, and I would hope that there would be something like that when people think about me, that they think about the things that I've been involved in, or the people that I helped, or, the stories that came from it. So am I getting fired?
The ripple effect. Is there anything I can do right now to help you? Is there something I can do to help?
With anything?
Anything.
Wow. I don't think so. I mean, I've had a lot of struggles in my sobriety,
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I think about on a regular basis. It's such a hard message to deliver to guys that are struggling, that are new into sobriety, that because you're doing this, it doesn't mean that your life is going to get, wonderful, and there's going to be a girl and, all the magical things that you want in your life. And it doesn't mean that you are or are not going to get those things, but recovery is recovery, And I think that's just such a hard message to deliver to people, because they just put their whole lives contingent upon that. If I can't get the girl to stay, or the wife to stay, or the job to stay, or, those kinds of things, that my recovery is over. And it's just not true, It
never ends, does it?
Mm-mm.
Is it the hardest thing you've ever done?
Helping?
Recovery.
For me, wow. It probably depends on the day you ask me, I mean, some days I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for it. There's not a day that I'm not. There's not, in the course of the last year or so, and I'm not saying this because it's you or because it's Encore or something like that, but the change in the things that I have an appreciation for come in the doses like that, where, as hard as some of the days have been, to learn and change and go through all that stuff, there's not a day that I don't have an appreciation for the fact that I'm getting that check and those benefits, And I think when people have been put, like myself, especially in sobriety, where you've been, I don't know, feel like you've been just stripped of everything, Like I've shared with you many times, in my sobriety, where I feel like that it was just, there was nothing to turn to. The money was gone. I was getting ready to lose Max. I'd lost the business. I was getting ready to move in with a friend and lose my son. I mean, what do you do? What do you tell somebody at that point? I called you that day. I mean, what do you say? Get back to it, man. Do what you can, And when I see guys coming into, they're so desperate, and there's so many times where you just see, and you just listen to them, and there's just not much you can tell them,
Mm-hmm.
Time's a bitch.
Yeah.
I don't know, I kind of got off topic there, but
no, that's fine.
Yeah, recovery is hard, man, but the benefit is just outrageous. So very few people make it, but the stories of recovery, and I'm surrounded with incredible men these days, and I've got a dozen guys I can call, and it's not the thought of going back to it, but going back to drinking or anything like that, but it's just, I think about what's going on with COVID in society, and, even when you talk to people that are non-addict or, that kind of stuff, I think that fellowship, being able to talk to a group of people that know you and love you and can listen,
Yeah.
And help support you on those difficult days. It doesn't matter if you're an addict or not, man, and I think that the struggle that people have is, how do I find that? Where do I go to find that?
Yeah.
And that's difficult because it's like walking into, you're the new kid at high school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that sensation of, where do I go and how do I do it and how do I figure out a place to help,
Yeah.
It's a difficult question. I feel very fortunate in that sense.
Yeah, I do too. You helped save me with it.
Yeah. I didn't do anything.
Sure you did.
I just listened a lot.
Well, that's a funny thing too, isn't it?
Yeah.
What does that mean, the power of listening?
It's the further I progress in sobriety and meetings and supporting guys that are new and, recovery and that kind of stuff, I believe God's message to me just gets simpler and simpler. He doesn't fumble around with words. I mean, it's just that aspect of it that it just gets simpler and simpler to me, Keep my mouth shut, make eye contact, put my cell phone away, and when I see that new guy come walking in again, I make sure to remember his name and say hello to him and find out the simplicity of what he has going on in his life. How's the wife? How's your job? You're going to be okay, man. Keep coming back. And that's just the simplicity of it because, I've lived it and I've walked away from it, and it's an awful place to be.
Just being present in that moment and holding some space is powerful, huh?
You're asking somebody to trust a process that they know nothing about, and they're already terrified to get there.
Yeah.
Walking through the door, that first time it's terrifying.
You think recovery will continue to be a challenge or be difficult for you throughout your life?
I don't know that it is.
Not now. But it's still work. Do you think do you still work at it?
On the shitty days. When I don't want to do it, and those become far and few between, and I'm pretty familiar with them. And there was a meditation class they did at the Shambhala Center. It was a 12-step based thing, and it was seeing beyond what you're thinking and feeling and continuing to do the right thing, and that's just so much of we just believe what it is that's right there in front of us,
Yeah.
If I'm stressed or worried or sad or upset, I'm trying to find a fix for it.
Yeah. We both have teenage sons. If you could impart one message into their brain that they could hardwire today that we know as teenage boys that they're not going to probably listen to, but if there was some magic fix, what would that look like? What would that be?
For my son, I believe that he believes, in the spiritual aspects in God and some of the other things. I've had a really good, long relationship with him and talked about a lot of different aspects of it, But as stressful as things are, I've watched him come through high school and, as wonderful as the people are, it's just, where are you going to go and what are you going to do and pick a school and pick a vocation and get busy and do it and do it and do it and do it. And, they just have forced that message on the kids where they don't really feel like that they have an option except to pick something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of times that's just kind of that lost aspect, and I think that's where my son has been coming from, and Encore has fit incredibly well for him and, creating some structure. But I think if I wanted to leave him with a message, one message, and obviously I have an answer for this, it would be that all of life is a learning lesson, that everything that is going on has been construed for his benefit. That he is going to be okay. And if he can continue to look at those things, and change and grow himself and turn to God in that sense, that everything is a learning lesson, and kind of keep his mindset there, I think that's what I'd want him to do.
I think that's really all I had other than to say thank you. And I greatly appreciate our brotherhood and friendship and all the guidance you've given me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you,
You're
man.
inspiring, man.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah,
Thank you.
We'll be interested to see where this ends up.
Yeah.
I'll need you to sign some paperwork. Disclose who
Take
I am.
one.
That's right.